was interesting because right at that point, we were cresting the invisibility line that hid the enemy defense. So we thought the only contact we had at the time was in the bunkers until we go to tank's lead, and HR is about 100 meters ahead of the two tank platoons because they're reacting to his movement. He goes over the rise first, and T-72 short lines him. He kills that and two more tanks in 10 seconds. He's on the net. He's real matter of fact. He's like, hey, there's tanks out there, green, white. Are you with me or what?
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served Warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we have a fantastic first-hand combat story account from the last great tank-on-tank battle from Tim Gauthier, a scout platoon leader who was on the front line of what would become known as the Battle of 73 Easting during the outset of Desert Storm. The Battle of 73 Easting was one of the first combat engagements of the ground war in which an American cavalry squadron of M1A1 Abrams, Bradley fighting vehicles, field artillery, and more took on an Iraqi armored division of the elite Republican Guard, outfitted at the time with modern T-72 Soviet tanks, armored personnel carriers, and fighting vehicles. This was a lesson in combined arms tactics and doctrine that Eagle Troop, led by then Captain H.R. McMaster, made look easy, but which is in fact incredibly difficult, as the Russian army learned when they bumbled through their unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, unable to shoot, move, and communicate as one force. McMaster would go on, of course, to become a general officer, playing a pivotal role in the post-9/11 era and serving as the National Security Advisor. As a former Cav officer myself from the Apache community, I've heard about and studied this battle for years, and it was an absolute honor to have a chance to interview someone who was actually there at the time. Tim would also go on to serve in some of the newly stood-up Stryker units, applying additional tactical lessons to a newer generation of armored vehicles in Iraq in the post-9/11 era. With that, please enjoy this front row seat to a legendary tank-on-tank battle, and possibly one of the last, from Tim Gauthier. Tim, thanks so much for taking the time to share your story with us today.
Thanks for having me on, Ryan. I love your show. And, the 73 East thing is, it's getting old history now. There's people I know who are in the Army, never heard of it. Never heard of it, sir. So, yeah, there's a lot of lessons I think can be learned from the fight. And, I'll never miss the opportunity to talk about the troopers and my non-commissioned officers who were just incredible.
Love it. I'm so excited for this one. And I just wanted to tell people, when I started this podcast many years ago, just even the idea of it was probably 2016, 2017. And I was writing down like, all right, who do I want to interview for this? And I had stuff like sniper, JTAC, fighter pilot. And then I had Battle of 73 Easting. and it was like completely different because it was the battle itself and what happened and how important it was that people are going to hear about here. And I would venture to guess a lot of folks have not, unless you came out of the mechanized scout cavalry communities, you may not have heard of this battle, but it's an amazing one. So I'm so excited and I'm so grateful that you and I were able to connect. So
That's awesome.
Tim, let's talk about how you grew up, because we haven't really had an armor officer on before. So we got to understand, what is the childhood and the making of an armor officer?
Okay. Probably won't be as good a story as, I was lucky. I came from a stable family. Both my parents were in education. My dad had started as a teacher and he was a school superintendent. My mom, school nurse for like 40 some years. I spent 7 years growing up in Pennsylvania, kind of from 3rd grade till 9th grade. I actually lived in Gettysburg for 4 years, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
I could ride my bike around and go to the different monuments. And they used to do this thing where they have a CD. It was a tape back then. You put it in your car and it would tell you, drive here. And then we'd talk about whatever monument. I've probably been through that tour like 50 times in the time we lived there. So, as a history major, if I ever needed a paper on Gettysburg, I was good for one.
You had it. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was awesome.
What did you grow up doing in terms of, athletics, school? It sounds like, probably very school focused with parents who are, superintendent.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't get a lot of slack in that area. Um, so when I moved to Pennsylvania, I'd never heard of wrestling, like the sport. Wrestling was something you saw on TV. But where we moved in Pennsylvania, it was like Little League. It's what you did in the winter. And so I got introduced to it in third grade. And I was lucky. My dad was a college professor at the time at Bucknell. And the gym was only 100 yards away, but you had to go through the cemetery to get there. So I used to go and sit and watch the college team practice, like during the winter. Not like every day, but pretty regularly. It's because it was interesting. And the coach he was nice to me, let me sit around and stuff. It was kind of motivating. It was, all right, this is what I aspire to do. It just appealed to me. I don't know what it is, the one-on-one, nobody to blame. You get out of it what you put into it. And if you got holes in your game, you get exposed.
The running, the weight cutting, the discipline, it probably translates very nicely into a career in the military, honestly.
There is pretty much nothing other than trying to kill me the Army could do to me that I hadn't done myself.
Where does this idea of the Army come in? Is it from traveling Gettysburg so frequently?
It's a lot of things. My dad had his Army experience. He got drafted and I think it was like 53, 54. He was a college grad. He's got like 3 stories from the Army, being left out on guard duty with no water at Fort Bliss and a couple other ones like that. But I got a ton of relatives. My brother's a retired naval officer. He'd been a Black Hawk crew chief in the Guard when he was in college. I've got uncles. One of my uncles is a master gunnery sergeant, retired. He's passed away now. My dad's brother was a Marine. The Laskys were both Marines. I probably got about 10 people on my dad's side of the family who've served in one capacity or another. And it spans all generations. I mean, I was a major at Fort Lewis and went to my cousin's commissioning.
That's cool.
I walked out the door, the building I was wearing, walked right up. So there's a big stretch. We've got about a 67-year stretch of people serving continuously. She was a Black Hawk pilot.
Nice.
Pretty cool. She's one of the first women classes to get through the Citadel.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I remember reading about that as it was happening.
Yeah.
So you did kind of grow up with the military kind of family lineage, at least. So were you talking about, hey, I'm thinking about the Army, these different branches?
It was interesting. I'm like a big reader, always had been. One day, I was probably in 4th or 5th grade. I found it was one of the big green books, the Army histories, official Army histories. They're like 800
I have
pages.
one on my mantle right now.
Do you?
I have one in a bookcase right here. Yeah.
So the door stopped, right?
Yeah.
I found one in my dad's books and just started reading it. And I don't know, it was like 1942, 50, it was the Pacific campaign. It wasn't, but I read it all. And I just started going to the library and taking out books because that's what you did back then, right? There's no internet. You walk down across town and you go to the library.
And it was all Army then, you're kind of the interest?
I never really considered another service. I threatened my parents once that I was going to go join the Marines, but they didn't call my bluff on that, fortunately.
Did you discuss it with anybody in the family as you were getting ready to sign up?
It was no surprise to my parents that I was going to go in the Army. They knew, from when I was a little kid, probably 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah. Kind
of figured out, I want to be in the Army and I want to be an Army officer.
So I get that you're reading about the Army, but what was it that was drawing you in at that age?
Like being outside, leading your soldiers. Of course, when you're a little kid, you have all these fantasies. I'm going to be in war. I'm going to be a hero. None of my guys get hurt, that kind of stuff. But I was just fascinated with it, the technology part of it. As I got older, the leadership part of it, motivating people to accomplish stuff together.
Yeah.
That appealed to me. And it was just a lifestyle. It's probably something from wrestling, but, just pushing yourself to see how far you can go.
And then if I recall, so you go out west for college and ROTC.
I actually applied to West Point And I went through the process, got my nomination from our congressman. But I get a note back from them in March, my senior. Hey, thanks for applying. No, we didn't accept you, but we can put you on the alternate list. Okay, put me on the alternate list. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, I kind of figured out where I wanted to go, and I wanted to go somewhere warm. So, Arizona State wasn't.
West Point ain't warm, so it was
It
like
ain't.
that, or yeah.
No, I mean the difference between the two couldn't be more stark. I mean, if you've been to West Point in the winter, it's like the building's gray, the river's gray, the cadets' uniform, everything. It was terrible. I used to have to take my recruiters there for their mental health visits, and seeing that place did nothing to cheer them up. About mid-July, I get a call. It's the West Point recruiter. Hey, great news. Enough people have canceled or otherwise bailed. Report days in 2 days. Are you going to be here? I'm like, sir, no. Like, what? I'm like, no. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I decided I wanted to be an Army officer, but I didn't want to go to West Point. I wanted to have a college experience, a fun one. So, I politely told him no. I don't think I told my dad that story until I was like a lieutenant colonel.
Do you think he would have made you go, or tried to encourage you to go?
My parents would have never made me do anything I didn't want to do,
Okay.
but I would have been feeling the heat about it, But it's like I told him, I say, that's your dream. That's not my dream.
Yeah. Where does the armor track come in for you then?
When I went to advanced camp,
Okay.
I went to Lewis as a Western school, and Lewis is pretty rainy. Summer's okay.
Yeah.
I just remember walking through those woods, doing our little patrols and everything. I'm just like, I'm not really digging this walking too much. So, they have branch day, right? The chemical guys try to sell you on the rope here, the decontamination. They're like, if people are looking at them going, nah. But I just remember the armored guy, this tank comes over the crest of the ridge and it's all torn up and muddy. And he just starts doing circles and the guns stay just pointed at us. And he goes around throwing up mud, jumping the tank, slams it up. This little dude, he must have been like 5'4". This big ass Stetson pops out of the hatch. And I was just like, that's it. That's what I'm doing.
That's amazing. I mean, for people listening who don't, advanced camp, you go to it. Every cadet does this when you're in ROTC, right, between your junior and senior year. You go to typically Fort Lewis. There's a couple places you could go. I went to Fort Lewis also, and it's in the summer. You go for not very long, couple weeks.
6 weeks.
And they have
7 weeks, I think.
They have this branch day where, for some reason, the Chemical Corps tries to put a hard sell on people. They bring everything out, but then
they
you
all got a brief.
They do. Yeah. They got aircraft, like static displays or an aircraft flying in, tanks coming in. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. So that's what did it, huh? It wasn't like the history books, or it was that display.
Nope. It was just a display. I was like, I could do that. I could see myself doing that.
And you end up finishing as a distinguished military graduate, go into training. Can you talk us through what is the pipeline like at that time? I know it changes over time, but probably not so different overall.
But the pipeline is, so it's about 5 months, I think, the basic course is. Then if you're going to airborne or ranger school or whatever, you go off to do that stuff. If you're going to a CAV squadron, you got to go to the Scout Platoon Leader course. They're like, if you don't pass, don't even bother reporting. Just go to the 21st Repo Depot. Tell them you're going in an armored battalion.
So Tim, wait, real quick on that one. I guess 2 questions. In OBC, so this is the basic course for people listening. This is like where your indoctrination, kind of your fundamental training as an officer. Are you actually getting in a tank in those 5 months?
Yes. So it's a very good course. You do everything. You've got a maintenance phase where you're on the tanks and you're learning how the tank functions. And they actually make you do the tank crew gunnery skills test. Drop the breech block, all 17 stages. So you go through them. So when you get to a unit, this isn't the first time you've seen this stuff and you don't embarrass yourself, embarrass your platoon sergeant. And then we do gunnery. It's not a real gunnery. It's a lot of firing from the baseline. You get maybe one moving engagement, but it gets you out there, gets you on the tank. You learn how to bore sight your vehicle and take care of it, how the fire control system works, and you get to put some rounds down range. And then at the end, the infamous 10-day war, which is tank on tank, lieutenant versus lieutenant. They just divide you in half. And we were on M60A3s. You'd get this E6 or E7 who'd been like a section commander, and they weren't lawn chairs, they're more sturdy than that, but they were just bolted to the top of the turret. And this dude just rode there like in that seat. Yeah, and there's all sorts of cases of them getting thrown down, I think they stopped with those seats in the last 30 years. But this guy, no kidding, would just sit there in the chair, and he's got the radio in his ear. He's listening to everything you do. And it's just 10 days of lieutenants, driving back and forth over the same terrain and basically arguing who got who.
Yeah. Is it like how they would do NTC or JRTC with like laser tag, basically?
They had a pretty basic mile system
Miles,
for, yeah.
Yeah.
But, we didn't have a lot of OC coverage, you know what I mean? And, it's kind of, among the NCOs, there's side bets, and they're like, hey, I got a pretty square lieutenant this time, you know what I mean? So it's like Stockholm syndrome. By like the third or fourth day, you've bonded, and he's rooting for you.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, it was cool.
You mentioned, trying to get into a Cav troop or a squadron. Can you help people understand what are the options that you have as you're going through the course and exiting? Obviously, there's the Cav route, non-Cav. What does that look like? What is your future? How is it different depending on which route you go?
Okay. I'll tell you, I had an ROTC instructor who sold me on the Cav, Major Steve Cross, and wherever you are out there somewhere. Little guy, had boots up to his knees, used to try to play the bugle in his office. He was the guy who's like, look, okay, you're going armor, I'm an armor off. Here's where you want to go. And he took a very personal interest in sorting my list for me, which eternally to his credit, I got what I wanted. But most of the students, I'd say, I don't know, 70% of the students are just going to an armor battalion. Yeah. 4 companies of 14 tanks, straight ahead. You're going to do gunnery twice a year. You're going to go to NCC every 2 years.
And they're awesome. M1s at the time. Is that right? This is like
depending on where you were.
89-90.
So this was 89-90. So if you were in Europe, you were already beginning to transition to A1s. There were places in the US that hadn't even received their M1s yet. Okay. So that was another selling point. You're going to be on an A1. Some of these guys will go to an armored battalion, and there's a single scout platoon in that battalion. So every lieutenant in that battalion's competing for that because no one wants to be the sport platoon leader. If you go to one of the divisions, each division has a divisional cavalry squadron. But the one everyone wanted to go to is either going to Germany, number one, and either going to the 11th ACR or the 2nd ACR. Because we're parked right next to each other on the border. And huge competition, obviously, between the Cav regiments. So what did the Cav regiment? Well, this was still before the wall came down. So a big part of our duties were border duties. So our squadron had a border camp up in Coburg. And it was a Bundesgrenzschutz post, so a German border police post that we shared with them. So a large part, you'd go to the border for like 3 or 4 30-day shots each year. And like what it sounds, they're staring at you, you're staring at them. There's lines you can't cross. There's places you can't go. And so it was another layer of qualification, like as a lieutenant, because you had to pass the border operations course, and then you had to pass the border leaders course, which was surprisingly not easy. There's a lot of guys who failed the first time, and there was no slack.
this is a cav unit that we're already talking about. Like you've already
Right.
self-selected, or not self-select. You've made it into the 11th or the 2nd ACR at the time.
Yes. And you're in a platoon. You're not like the assistant S1 or something.
Yeah.
They didn't tell you to go back across the street to 3rd Brigade. So backing up, so the ACR's Armored Cav regiments were the Corps commander's eyes and ears, basically. We provided, bottom line, we provided early warning, time and maneuver space for the Corps commander to maneuver the Corps. So that meant we had to be out far enough in front of the Corps to provide that space. So in Iraq, we ended up doing what's called a covering force mission, which means you're far enough out there that even the enemy's artillery can't range them. You've kind of snapped that rubber band and you're out there anywhere from, I don't know, 40, 50 miles ahead. The divisions are about a day and a half behind you.
What's the task org? Could you go through the task org
Sure.
at the time for you all in the 2nd ACR?
Okay, so we had 3 line squadrons. So each line squadron had 3 cavalry troops consisting of 9 tanks and 13 Bradleys, and a mortar section. Each squadron also had a tank company of, do the math, 14 tanks. We had an organic howitzer battery of 2 gun platoons of 3. So you're seeing we're already task organized for what we do. That's one of the strengths of the ACR.
You've got all the different components together effectively.
Yeah, you live together, you PT together, you go to the field together. So you have 3 line squadrons. So already a squadron's much heavier than like an armored battalion. An armored battalion has 57 tanks. A Cav squadron's got 41 tanks and 41 Bradleys and a howitzer battery. So within each troop, you've got 2 tank platoons, 2 scout platoons. So if you're a good lieutenant and going through your normal progression, you spend about a year, a little over a year in a tank platoon before going to a scout platoon. That's no one goes right into a scout platoon. I don't care if you were General Bono's kid, still going to a tank platoon. So now within the regiment also has an aviation squadron. So we had, I want to say, 3 OH-58 troops, each one aligned with a squadron. 3, they were Cobras at the time, so 3 Apache, 3 of those troops, and then we had an S&T troop, a bunch of Blackhawks, plus the commander's bird and the EW bird. So you can see even at the regimental level, we've got a lot of combat power, and we work together every day.
And that squadron is commanded by a lieutenant colonel, right?
Lieutenant colonel, right?
Who's got artillery, some aviation, like all of that within that person's purview. And then
yes,
we got to talk about the Stetson. So obviously it's a Cav troop or Cav squadron. How did you earn your Stetson at that time in kind of late 80s, early 90s?
Well, here's what's interesting. 2nd ACR was not really big on the Stetsons. Like I was in other units, like the 3rd ACR and the 14th Cav, where as soon as you came in the door, your platoon sergeant's like, "Hey, sir, let me help you out here. Go buy it. I'll help you fix it." What you had to do is earn your spurs, though. So we had a spur program, and it was all laid out. You had a book, you had to go through a gunnery, you had to qualify your tank, you had to qualify your platoon, had to become border leader certified, had to get above a 270 on your PT test. So there's a list about like 30 some requirements to get spurred. That took most people about a year-ish to get through all the requirements. So you could tell guys walking around on Fridays who had them, who didn't.
It's a big deal. Yeah. At that time.
It's a big deal. And you would catch a lot of heat if you weren't progressing towards your spurs or a spur holder already.
So one of the things you mentioned, staring across the border at the enemy, basically, at the time. What kind of tanks were they in, just out of curiosity?
Our opponent on the other side was, I think, the 4th Guards Motorized Rifle Division. And so they were all top of the line stuff, BMP2s, T-72, like the latest T-72, not the export versions like the East Germans had. Our regiment was going to square off against a division, basically.
I think it's so hard for people today to wrap their head around how large scale that fight was going to be and kind of what you did going into Iraq, which we're about to talk about in the Battle of 73 Easting. But we're just so used to these small arms FOBs in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it's so different back then.
And now, as the Army returns to large scale combat operations, we've lost that. Because my peers now, if they're not retired, they're probably a 3-star doing something. There's a couple of them, bouncing around out there, but they ain't down in the brigades. They ain't in the Division G3. I mean, it's all discovery learning now.
Yeah. And we kind of just watched Russia stumble through this when they invaded Ukraine not long ago, and how poorly they executed combined arms. And I know you all did some intense training before you went downrange, so maybe that's a place where we could go now. I feel reading a lot of the history about this battle, the train ups you all did were so useful. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So it was interesting. After the wall came down in November of '89, we still kept going to the border until German reunification the following October.
Were you over there when the wall came down?
Got there 2 weeks after. My Eagle troop was on the border when it happened.
No way.
And I got there 2 weeks afterwards.
Sorry, what happened, like, for the guys that told you about it, like when they're on the border and the announcements made, like what happened?
They said it went crazy. They went down to the crossing point in Molleroith, and there were just troop-ons, like going over the horizon of people, not necessarily fleeing for good, but coming over to see if it's true.
Wow.
Maybe go buy some consumer goods, go to the grocery store. I mean, it was a big, big deal. And it was like everything changed. Amazing. It was weird because there were places that were restricted to us just based on line of sight and other things that you couldn't go. And all of a sudden, we're just driving around up there. All the restrictions were gone in a day.
Jeez. Okay. Sorry to derail you, but just the timing there is significant, obviously.
Sure. I just remember I get there, the wall comes down, just cause happens. I'm in the BOQ and going, man, I'm in the wrong branch in the wrong place. I'm missing everything.
Can you tell people what just cause is for those who don't know?
That was the invasion of Panama and removal of Manuel Noriega. It was a light infantry fight. It was the 82nd, the Range Regiment, SEALs, stuff like that. I mean, I think the only division that got in there is 5th Infantry Division, which no longer exists. Had a brigade go down there. That was it. But getting back to the training, so the biggest immediate challenge is qualifying on your tank. If you ain't qualified as a tank commander, you're gonna go work in the S4 shop. I mean, that's just the way it is. And so we were on our first gunnery with the M1A1s. And just real quick, they have combustible ammunition. So the casing is consumed except for like the aft cap that's left on it. Right. So we get to gunnery, nobody's hitting anything, which is crazy because usually the regiment is the top dog in all of USERA, just because we have more money and time to train. Nobody's hitting it. We're shortlining everything. Nobody qualifies Q1 on the tank side. Bradley's gunnery's easy. We come back. The Friday we get back. Now, mind you, I've got 4 master gunners in my platoon of 16 guys. That's unheard of. Usually you don't find that many in a battalion.
And how many tanks do you have? 4 tanks, Tim?
I had 4 tanks. I had a master gunner on every tank.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Okay.
Never saw anything like that again, of course. But the Friday we get back, all of the platoon leaders, platoon sergeants are lined up down the stairs outside the squadron commander's office. And we're all getting letters of reprimand. Local file, you don't know that as lieutenant. We're just saying, it's like, next, ching, they ask one to call the next. And my platoon sergeant, Eddie Wallace, about 5'5", black guy, just from Georgia, just the man knew how to train, and he's just fuming as we make our way up the stairs. Sir, I'm gonna, like, don't do this to me, man. Now we get in there, the boss starts reading, the letter to us. He had a real nasally voice. And Sergeant Wallace just explodes. Like, this is bullshit. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Da, 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 da. I'm like pulling him out. We'll be going now. I thought I was dead meat. Never heard another word about it.
But was it
So
not because of it was a malfunction of some sort?
the issue was the ammo is very temperature sensitive. If you leave it sitting on the pad and then pick it up right before you shoot, the reading you're getting from inside the ammunition storage rack may say like 45 degrees, and that's what you put in the computer. But the rounds may only be like 10, 15 degrees, whatever the ambient temperature. So you don't have enough super elevation in the gun. Therefore, you short line it.
Wow.
So it took a committee to figure that out when we got back.
I mean, if
Nobody
everybody's
knew.
missing, you have to assume that it's not operator error here.
No, it wasn't, because you can tell when somebody's not foresighted or they don't know what they're doing, because just randomness, and they're just doing random things in there, and the bullets going wherever it goes. So it was a humbling experience. I mean, we came back and it was like, all right, we need to figure this out. So we spend a lot of time in the field when you're in the cavalry. I think the first year I was there was over 260 days, including the border and everything. So we came back, we went to the border, did RTEPs, so platoon evaluations on the German countryside, probably for the last time. We just did that for 2 weeks straight, came back, then we went to Hohenfels like a month later. Now, Hohenfels, the CMTC, is like the NTC of Europe for people who haven't been to Europe. And it's another one of those litmus tests. You either pass or fail. And the squadron had not done well the previous year.
Okay.
They got, according to the lieutenants who were there when it went down, they got their asses handed to them.
And just for people listening, so these NTC, JRTC, CMTC, all these things, these are these big training centers where like your unit will go in. I did them as well from an aviation perspective, and you're fighting the opposition force, like the bad guys, whoever they are at that point in time in the world. And you've got other units that's all they do. They are the bad guys constantly using, probably T-72s or some type of Soviet era.
They had 113s that were modified and Humvees that were modified and some tanks. But yeah, it's force on force. There's no one to sit, say, Mother, may I? Either you win or go home. So it was a point of emphasis, and it was a big change. New squadron commander, who, for whatever you thought about him personally, was technically and tactically confident. But our S3 Doug McGregor, so he ran the place. And he's just one of those guys that had a very forceful, dynamic personality, a lot of charisma. And he liked talking to lieutenants and platoon sergeants. That's how he'd figure out what was going on. So it's kind of weird. He'd just be like, hey, Gauthier, what do you think the problem was in gunnery? I'm like, sir, I've been here like 4 months. I said, my platoon sergeant is telling me it's this. It was the ammo temperature. Like, okay, went back and researched it. Like, I think you're right.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just passing where, believe me, I had no idea.
That's cool.
But my platoon sergeant, he knew what happened. He figured it out pretty quickly, him and the other senior tankers.
When does
McMaster
show up? Can we introduce
so
this
McMaster?
Guy?
So I had a CO previous to McMaster. Nice guy. Prior service had been, I think, a sergeant first class. He'd been in a while when he went the officer route, and he just was not good in the field. He could move paper, but he didn't know what was going on. I mean, I just remember going to Reforger in January of 1990, and it was just like, I didn't know what we were doing, from one day to the next. It was just like the support sucked. Like, we'd get breakfast like 18 hours it's been sitting in the, mermites. The eggs are all green. Our first sergeant wasn't that good either. So it was like we came back from there and they're like, hey, thanks for your service. You're changing out of command now. So this guy laughed and we get HR. And, you hear things. The regiment's a pretty insular group of people. And he was working up in the brigade or the regimental 3 shop for a guy named Doug Lute, who's retired 4-star, smart guy, connected guy. Anyways, so he comes down and he wasn't a yeller or anything. He just had a very strong, forceful personality. Yeah. It's like when he talked, he'd start leaning into your space, just, and not because he was trying to intimidate, he'd just get so excited about what he was talking about. He'd get closer and you'd be like, edging backwards. But we knew the deal. We found out it was a Friday. Okay. The regiment was starting a command post exercise on Sunday. And back in those days, you're actually rolling like the dice, moving the little stratego pieces around on the terrain model. That's what the lieutenants did. We were just there to, be exercise support. So it's Friday afternoon and HR's like, hey, I'm going to give the op order for Dragoon Star at 1600. Okay, great, sir. It's getting the local training area. We're like, what? It's like, yeah, I hope you brought your gear. It's out in the local training area. I'm like, oh, shit. Friday afternoon. We didn't know we were going to be working that night. But we're like, yeah, we'll go out there. It's a troop op order. What's it going to take? 20, 30 minutes max, because we were used to the old guy. So we go in there. First good sign is he doesn't have any notes. We're like, all right, cool. We're going to be out of here quick. He goes into an op order that could have come straight from Leavenworth and just talk for the next hour and 10 minutes, like by the book, paragraph by subparagraph. And we're trying to write as fast as we can. We're just like, oh, shit.
Like he means it. This is a legit operation that's coming our way here.
If we're doing it right. There was no hand waving stuff with him. And that's how it started. So this must have been February of 90, early March, right after we came back from gunnery in February. That was the final straw, I think. And he just blows in there, he's got one of those personalities, like a force of nature, just intense. People used to call him Intense Six. And, but he had a great sense of humor. He was a humble guy. He could laugh at himself. When he made mistakes, he was like, I jacked that up. There was none of this trying to put himself. I mean, he knew he had command authority. He didn't need to act like he did because he knew he was confident in himself.
I was going to say, obviously, in the story that we're about to go through, he features prominently. It didn't happen by chance that he's put in command of this. So he's a troop commander. He's probably 28, 29, 30 at the time.
Yeah, about 5 years older than us.
And he'll go on, for people who are listening, to become, I think, a lieutenant general, national security advisor not long ago. Yep. I mean, a very accomplished career, but it really kind of starts with this battle we're about to get into.
Does. The next big obstacle was Hohenfels, going to CMTC. And we quickly found out, like on maneuvers, he knew his stuff. I mean, very flexible, adaptable, very aggressive, very, hey, when in doubt, attack. And so it was great working for him because he really gave you freedom. He held you accountable, but he wasn't going to micromanage your training either. He was very a big supporter of the NCOs.
And how did Hohenfels go? I got to imagine
we smoked them.
Yeah,
we smoked them. There were fights where they barely got out of the motor pool.
When was so we're kind of, it's 1990, I think, that we're getting into
June of 1990 right now.
Okay. When was the last major tank-on-tank battle that people would talk about before this?
1973, Golan Heights. Wow. If you knew a little bit about it, most people would default back to, I think, Europe. Oh, George Patton. Must have been George Patton. It's That's all anybody knows. But yeah, with the exception of the Israelis, nobody.
It's rare.
It hadn't been done. Yeah. There's this yawning chasm in knowledge because we had changed doctrine in the meantime. When we went to air-land battle in the 80s, that was a totally different way of fighting than we had before and never been validated. I mean, we went to the BTCs, of course, and they studied it and everything, but man, it's not the same thing
It's not the same.
as someone trying to kill you. So
Is now an appropriate time to jump into to set the stage for this battle?
sure. Yeah.
Let's
We can
do it. Give people an idea of where you're at the time, because you're a scout. You go to the scouts, right?
So we were in gunnery at Grafenwehr. Ready. We were getting ready. We were doing something cup. We were maneuvering against a British squadron out on the countryside, and then rolling straight in from that to do our Calfax on range 301. It was going to be like 9 days.
I know range 301 so well. This is funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Branded in your synapses. And I think it was right before we were getting ready to start that block of training. That was the day that Saddam invaded. Because I remember it was the day before Tank Table 8, which is our crew qualification. And, we heard about it. And HR got a few days before we got the troop all together, because the scouts were doing some ranges, we were doing some range. Anyways, he gets everyone together. He's like, hey, the next op order I give you after this is probably going to be in Iraq. So train accordingly. He put the word out right then. He's just like, we're going, and ain't nobody can tell me we're not going. Everybody's waiting. November 8th, Bush is going to announce the additional troops that are going. Because up to that point, it was like the 82nd and 101st, just sweating it out in the desert, sitting there like speed bumps. And so they had announced that the decision and the troop list were going to come out on either the 8th or 9th of November. And I just remember we're all sitting around AFN. Everyone's got the story where you were when you heard it. But it was like, yep, you're going, and you're leaving the first week of December.
3 weeks?
About 3.5, maybe 4 at the
Wow.
max, depending on what troop you were in. Got to get everything rail loaded, got to take it to Bremerhaven, put it on the ships, send guys with it. I mean, obviously work some long hours pushing out, because we never pushed out the door to go anywhere like that. We weren't like units in the state. When we went to war, we're just driving up the road about 30 kilometers. It was all individual stuff at that point. Anytime we weren't getting on the boats, we were doing individual training, marksmanship, cross training on weapons, crew drills. So like, it's really boring way to train on tanks and Bradleys. But when you're training for crew gunnery, yeah, we call them chair drills. You actually sit there with the gunner, driver, and commander, and you just sit there and they'll tell you the prompt. You see a PC at 800 meters, you're moving, and there's troops at 600 meters, and then you got to spit out the fire command, PC troops, PC first, loader load heat, so everyone would go through until that part of it was perfect. So when you were on your tank, you weren't wasting JP4 and time. You know what I mean? Doing training that you could have done without your tank. So they were very big on that type of. Every NCO was supposed to have a book of opportunity training classes he lugged around with him that you could just go, hey, you pull it out, doesn't require any materials or anything.
And had you already transitioned to the scout?
I had.
Platoon?
When we came back from Graf at the end in mid-August, I went to the scout platoon. So I went from 2nd platoon to 3rd platoon, right across the hall. Stayed in the troop, thank God.
What type of vehicles do you then have in the scout platoon?
Bradleys.
Bradleys, okay.
Big, loud, tall Bradleys. They're great for fighting. They're not so great for scouting because they put out a lot of smoke, and it's just a whole bigger mission. I mean, you got engineer skills. I mean, 19 Deltas are kind of a jack of all trades. They got to be infantrymen. They've got to be, engineers, fire support specialists. You got to do it all, kind of. So it's interesting. The training is always, there's never a lack of things to do. So stuff's going out the door. We don't have our vehicles anymore. We're waiting to fly. And so HR starts putting out, it was like these Xerox, like little books. I think it was called FM-101 Eagle. And it was just everything from notes from like Mark Harmon, who was a division commander in North Africa during World War II. Because it was the last real treatise we had on mounted desert warfare. We were reaching back 40 years, 45 years for that knowledge because it just wasn't out there. And it was that, and it was, hey, we decided early, we're going to make stuff stupid simple. You know, the desert, basically, it's flat. You know, the drills, everything came down to drills: punch left, punch right, hold punch left, right. And so you would just spend all your time rehearsing those drills. I mean, we'd be out on the field with your Bradley commanders, you felt kind of stupid at first, telling them what to do. All right, you don't have to make the engine sounds this time, flank to the left,
Just walking around.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you got tankers, they're in the golf carts because the Rod and Gun Club was on the other side of our fence. They're out there like maneuvering in their golf cart. It's just guys using what they have available.
Yeah. And you brought up, you mentioned it's the desert that you're going to go fight in, and it truly is.
Right.
Like, this battle is going to be in the desert, but your unit has been in Germany. Like, that's where you've trained. Even at Graf and Hohenfels, you might have open fields, but it's probably hilly, trees,
muddy,
different terrain, very different.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Our uniforms are green. Our vehicles are green. Our camo nets are green. Everything's green, and we're going to someplace brown. So yeah, it was kind of a big deal. And it was a different way of maneuvering because in Germany, there's a lot of cover and concealment you can use to move around. And, if you wanted to live more than a few minutes, you got proficient, hey, cover me from this wood line. You make the dash to the next wood line. All right, I'm covering, you move. So bounding within, you likened it to battleships fighting on the ocean, that there's really no limitations on your maneuver.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our drills kind of look naval in character. Speed became the biggest priority. Aggressive, using speed, piling on somebody before they can get their guns in the fight. It was and that wasn't inferred. That was something that came down in every OPD, whenever the troop commanders were talking to us. I mean, they just pounded it into us. This is how we win. This is how we win. Don't be shy. Do something. Even if it's the wrong thing, do it vigorously.
And it proves to be accurate. And like, we'll jump into the battle here in a second, but it's very much validated on the back end of this like speed, initiative, and violence of action. All right. So we're kind of on as we're recording this, we're about 33 years off of this event. Like, it's February of 1991, right, where this happens. So what is could you kind of, I think it happens on the 26th. Could you take us maybe the 24th? Because I think there's a bit of a lead up that gets into this, right?
So I'll take you to the 22nd real quick, the night of the 21st. So anyways, we got there, we trained a lot, we were ready to go. It's February. Air War started a month ago. The only thing I'll point out is we told our soldiers constantly, there is not going to be a ceasefire. The only way home is through the Republican Guard. Don't listen to what other people say. Focus on the fight. So anyways, 21 February, our platoon, we sent a dismounted patrol over the berm to ensure, they were making sure there were no mines where we wanted to put our the next day when we busted through the berms. So they're looking for mines, making sure there are no Iraqis observing the other side, and hanging the VS-17 panels. So when we came off of the escarpment, everyone knew exactly where to go. It was like, I'm like 10 meters further down the berm. Now go to the VS-17 panel.
Yeah, because you said the air war has been going on. There's no forward line of troops. It is you all crossing the berm literally when this kicks off.
Yeah. You'd see them go over at night, and you'd hear them coming back and forth. And we were on a large escarpment that was like 200 feet high. So we could look over the berm far into Iraq. So we pretty much knew there was nobody over there, right across there. But we sent some scouts down to make sure they hadn't left anything behind. It was good. So we crossed in. That was the 22nd. And really, most of that next 3 days was movement north and then east as the regiment advanced ahead of 7th Corps. We get the regiment out front, 3 squadrons online in this part of the war, and then we had the divisions about a day and a half behind us.
And what was the
And
mission, if you can kind of share for people? We
so,
should talk the enemy situation, but also like, what is your mission at this time as the regiment?
so we're doing what's called an advanced covering forces regiment. So we're far enough out ahead of the divisions that they're pretty much immune to artillery fire. We've broken that rubber band. We're far enough out that they can maneuver without being impeded in any way other than the terrain. So within the squadron, it's a movement to contact. Within the troop, it's a movement to contact and just executing battle drills. But we didn't encounter much enemy. So the 23rd, I think, first platoon, it was like 2 PCs or something. I mean, they destroyed them like that. We were having that across the squadron. So the way the squadron operated is we had Fox Troop, we were in a diamond. So we had Fox Troop leading, they were the point of the diamond, Eagle Troop behind them, echelon to the left, Ghost Troop echelon to the right, the tank company, the TOC, and the artillery tucked in right within that protective wedge of troops. And the drills we ran all the time is like, hey, Fox Troop makes contact, they fix the enemy. Eagle Troop, Gauthier, you're on the flank. Guys go out, screen the flank, get down the ground, give the flags to the tank company. Hey, this way to kill the enemy, so they know where they're going. And that's what we rehearsed all the time. We get across, we shot some stuff up on the way up there. My guys didn't. So my platoon, our job was to screen the flank of the troop and by extension, the squadron. So it meant driving sideways through Iraq for 5 days, which got kind of old, So here you are going across Iraq for 4 days, just going sideways, sucking in exhaust. It was important, but we're like, hey, when are we going to get in the fight? We were told there were going to be Iraqis out here. So gradually on the night of the 25th, we began to detect signs that we're in the Republican Guard security zone. So Ghost Troop had engaged a company of MTLBs that night. The guys promptly threw down their weapons. So the Ghost X, so they brought all these MTLBs back to the headquarters, so the troop commanders could see them and realize what pieces of shit they were. It was more of a confidence saying, hey, this is the thing they're driving. This is what they're fighting from.
And that's a tracked, like, small Russian AP, like, personnel
low
carrier.
Profile. It's like their general purpose hull. So like a ZSU 23-4 is mounted on an MTLB track. Every weird oddball thing they got is mounted on that. So Republican Guard had T-72s, PMP-1s. The other guys had like T-55s and MTLBs. That's how you kind of tell what kind of unit you were up against.
Because the Republican Guard, that's the enemy you're going to look for. That's
right.
Your understanding of the enemy situation is that is the most capable enemy force that's going to be there. It's why they have the most advanced tanks and weapons effectively.
We know what they're doing. They are the Talcana and the Medina divisions, I think the Hammurabi, their job was to defend, keep the lines of communication, the roads open, so the rest of the Iraqi army can evacuate before we slam into them. So they were told, hey, no retreat. You fight from here, either win or die.
One of the things I do want to mention that really surprised me as I was kind of reading about this battle, you mentioned the Talcana division. So that's one of the tank units within the Iraqi Republican Guard. The commander of that is a Major Muhammad who trained at Benin at the infantry career course.
Oh, yep, he sure did.
So he learned our tactics, and now he's fighting all these guys that he was in class with, basically.
Yep, and he was a smart guy because their defense was a reverse slope defense. So, I mean, they were using it to, to nullify our standoff range advantage that we had with our tanks and Bradleys. Smart guy. Made a couple of mistakes that were costly, some assumptions about maneuvering across the desert. They oriented it down this road that ran through this sector, never thinking that anybody could just come cross country through the desert.
But he's got presumably, what is it, maybe 50 to 60 tanks in his defensive position, and he's just one of several. And you're coming in with, a squadron, as you just mentioned. So you've got the several troops online, echelon.
But we've only got 2 troops online at this point.
Okay.
So at that morning, we went to 2 troops online. It was too crowded. They had reduced our squadron sector to only about 10 kilometers. And Major McGregor S3 is like, no, we're not lining 3 troops up and being dumb. Okay. The lead troops have to have room to maneuver. So we're going to go 2 up and 1 in the tank company back. And so that was how we proceeded the night of the 25th and starting the day of the 26th. That's when we made all those changes. So you wake up on the 26th. I mean, we didn't really get much sleep. But after stand 2 on the 26th, we received word that we're all reshuffling. We're going from the 3 abreast to 2 abreast. We've got to refuel, got to make contact with 3rd Armored Division, whatever battalion's going to be on our left flank, figure out who they are, do all that scout stuff, get the frequencies, get a copy of their graphics and stuff like that before we move. So very busy. I mean, just trying to find the refuel point was a challenge because there were only 3 GPSs in the whole troop. They were like these Trimble green things. They were about the size of out of lunchbox, but pretty close. And they worked. There were times a day when they didn't have enough satellites, called GPS sad time, because you better keep track of where you're going, even though you got a GPS. But me, the scout platoon leader, and then Captain McMaster shared his with the fire support officer. That was it. So there's a lot of driving around by platoon leaders at different times, when you wanted to know where everybody exactly was, and close enough wasn't close enough. But that's it, 3 of them. So we're fighting through this sandstorm. The regimental, the aviation squadrons have been grounded. Nobody's flying. We think we're in their security zone. We think so within 10 to 15 kilometers, we're going to make contact with the lead brigades in the main body. Now we're getting all this, hey, there's J-stars, there's MTIs. So that kind of intelligence was not really well developed at the time. We would just get like random, they'd vomit like this raw data at us. We're like, okay, why is that important? What does that all mean to us? I don't know. Keep going. So if you read any of McGregor's book, you'll see that there's a lot of fits and starts to our movement on the night of the 25th and the night of 26th. There's some real indecision on the part of the Corps commander when he thought we had fulfilled our mission and he was going to pass divisions through. But at the same time, General Franks was being hounded by General Schwarzkopf to go faster, to accept more risk. And that's a different story, but they had different ideas of what was appropriate risk and how much they were willing to assume. And really, we thought we were going to be told to hold in place. And it was like telling us our dog died. I mean, we were like, no, that can't happen. We've come all this way. Guys were furious, throwing shit against the side of the Bradley and stuff. Guys weren't faking it. You know what I mean? They were like really, really pissed off. And within a few hours, okay, we're not going to be the Corps Reserve. We're moving again. So we start moving about 8 in the morning, and the whole day it's like, hey, we're at the 58 East. Okay, you can go to the 60. And then we'd sit at the 60. You say, no, you're going to go back to the defense. We're sending engineers up. And then an hour later, no, we're moving again. Corps commander, regimental chief commander, whatever, changed their mind. So it was just like these fits and starts as we approached where we had the enemy templated.
And if I can on this, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned 58 Easting, 60 Easting.
Yeah.
This is obviously a line, an imaginary line on a map that's on the map that you're using, possibly on the GPS that three of you have. And you've got basically like a limit of advance almost that progressively moves
Yes.
eastward. Is it every 10 kilometers you get to another Easting, like 60 to 61,
No,
something
it
like
was
that?
just, it's just shorthand. So like the 7-3 Easting, that's Papa Uniform 0073
Got it.
or
Yeah.
7300. So it's the line of longitude that you're on. So you got to do a little conversion in your head because we really didn't have maps. They gave us a bunch of maps when we were in Saudi. And after putting together like a 10 by 10 sheet, we're like, there's only like 4 feet of relief in this terrain. There's like one terrain feature. So what we ended up doing is we just had if you see the regimental graphics in the book, everyone had a laminated copy of that on an 8 by 10 sheet of paper, taped to the door to our 25 millimeter. And then we just use blank acetate with the grid overlaid. And we didn't really care where we actually were. What we cared about was where we were in relation to each other. So you're always like doing geometry on this thing, going, okay, I'm here. Now I'm looking at 90 degrees north and I see my wingman and he must be at this grid. We got really good at doing stuff like that, doing polar plot, calls for fire. I mean, no one
'Cause
had a map.
you don't have terrain features to base
There's
something off of.
nothing.
There's no
Yeah.
like road intersection or
Nope.
village or river. It's
Endless
flat. Okay.
flat
So
space.
you guys you're moving east and then you kind of get called back and then you keep moving.
And this went through 3 or 4 iterations as various people arm wrestle and negotiate. And his regimental commander in his own notes said he wanted to stop outside of direct fire contact of the main body, strip away the security zone, find the main body, fix them in place with fires, but don't get into direct fire fight. Yeah. Somebody didn't get the word because, yeah. We finally, about 3 in the afternoon, Captain Master comes on the net. He's just like, hey, guys, fellas, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. We attack in like 5 minutes. And it's just like, ooh, all right, get ready. And so we just started moving out then. And we had a limit of advance of the 7-0, I believe, at that point when we started that last movement. And then we make contact. So my third platoon.
Talk through from the start here. Let's go through this
Okay.
contact.
So third platoon was now on the southern flank, screening the southern flank of the Eagle Troop, screen the southern flank of the squadron, supposedly tied in with third squadron to our south. So we start to advance. At first, they're keeping up with us. We're all in line. Everything's nice and tidy and everything. And then we make contact. And people call it a bunker complex. What it was a bunch of concrete block buildings that were unfinished. There are like 4 or 5 of them. You could kind of see some revetments. It looked like some vehicles had been like pulled in. They like bashed down the back of the little building and pulled in there. And so my 3-2, so my alpha section, Sergeant McReynolds, was the furthest forward of the platoon. I said, sir, got some guys surrendering. I'm going to run out and pick them up. And before I can say, hey, send your wingman, you're the section sergeant, he just takes off to go grab them. He jumps down. They're only 400 meters from the bunkers at this point. He jumps down, starts grabbing by the scruff of the neck and just tossing him on the front slope of his Bradley. He's like this big, wiry guy from Alabama, great athlete, and he's just slinging dudes. He jumps back up. He's got 4 guys on the back. They're coming back, and the EPWs are like, it looked like they won the lottery. They're waving at us, and, their little white handkerchiefs and stuff as he goes by to drop him with the first sergeant. And happiest dudes in the world, easily the happiest dudes within 50 miles at this point. And as Sergeant McReynolds is bringing the EPWs back, I get a report from his wingman, Sergeant Harris, who's the furthest forward and tied in with 1st Platoon scouts that are leading the troop at this point. Like, sir, they're shooting at me. And I come back, well, Sleeping killed them then. And immediately told my gunner, it's like, hey, see that building there? Put a toe in that building. And I was like, okay, gave platoon fire command, like, guys, hey, we had standard drills, like, hey, frontal target, these guys work left to right, outside to inside, these guys work right to left, outside to inside. My section works from inside to outside, near to far. So we had drills on distributing fire, so we weren't just like re-hitting the same vehicles over and over again. So, but you got to kind of give everybody something to orient on. So, slam the toe in there.
Tim, real
Go
quick,
ahead.
can you explain what a TOW is for people?
So, a toe is a tank killing missile. It's got a range of about 3,750 meters. The Bradley carries two of them, already loaded. There's a box on the side. The bad thing about it, it's a great weapon. It's a tank killer, but you can't fire it on the move. And you got to track it all the way to the target. It's not like fire and forget stuff that we have now. There's a long wire that just spools out behind it, and you're just trying to keep the crosshairs on the target until it impacts. You know, guys will try to steer it and they'll drive it into the ground. There's an art to doing it. It takes some training to do it correctly. And so we launch a tow. It implodes in the building. I think there was I thought there was an MTLB parked in the building anyways. And at that point, everybody, it's like throwing a light switch. The whole platoon just starts shooting, and they're smoking stuff. And like in a unit, there's a couple of guys who are the real killers. There's guys putting out fire, and then there's guys killing a preponderance of stuff. My gunner, Sergeant Hovermill, was one of them. And then on the 3-5 track, I had a guy named Sergeant Cooper. He's an oil roughneck now. That was his career path from the Army. If that tells you something. Chain smoking Louisianan, just best gunner in the regiment. You know, probably had 2 DUIs, should be a sergeant first class, was an E5. You know, we had a lot of NCOs like that. And back in the day, you know, you could survive a DUI or two. So anyways, we start firing and I start doing my job. I get on the troop net, hey, give them a contact report. Say, look, this is what we got. This is what I think. I think it's a platoon plus. Dug here in the buildings. Recommend we have tanks action right and just fire a volley of heat into the bunker complex. They did. So part of our job was opening that lane for them, define their left and right limits so they're not pulling up behind somebody and shooting. So get the guys lined up. Didn't take long. It's just a drill. Commander says, hey, action right. Makes a right turn. Tanks come online. Battle carry heat. On my command, 1 round heat. And they just sent 9 at once into the village bunker, what we call it. Buildings are collapsing, stuff's catching fire, guys are running around out there, guys getting machine gun. I mean, everybody at that point, you know, it was a bad place to be in that bunker complex right then. So just as they complete that engagement, they're facing southeast now instead of east, while first platoon still scouting east of the troop. The northernmost section in my Petchek's first platoon, all of a sudden, I think they thought they were on the platoon net, but they were transmitting on the troop net. Not that ever happens, right? And they're like, you just hear tanks, we got to shoot them. And everyone's like, you know, HR's like, hey, break. Who is that? You know? And finally, and it only took seconds. It seems like forever at the time because your time is all dilated and everything. First platoon leader, Mike Petchek, comes in. It's me, contact T-72s, engaging, out. And McMaster comes back with, hey, go to tanks lead. Okay, so that was our drill. When we made contact, the scouts no longer lead. Tanks come on. They were in a wedge. So commander leading, 4th platoon on the right, 2nd platoon on the west, echelon each side, and pass through the scout platoon, and they become the main effort of the troop at that time. So it was interesting because right at that point, we were cresting the intervisibility line that hid the enemy defense. So we thought the only contact we had at the time was in the bunkers until we go to tanks lead, and HR is about 100 meters ahead of the 2 tank platoons because they're reacting to his movement. So he goes over the rise first, and T-72 short lines him. He kills that and 2 more tanks in 10 seconds. He's on the net. He's real matter of fact. He's like, hey, there's tanks out there, green, white. Are you with me or what? It's hard to kill 3 in 10 seconds because your loader can only load so fast. He's got a 45-pound awkward piece of ammunition that he's pulling out, turning over, sticking in the gun tube, arming it, and telling it's ready. To do 3 in 10 seconds, that's all-star level.
You mentioned a T-72 short-lined him. Is that what you said? What does that mean?
He shot too low.
The T-72 shot at him.
Yeah, almost made it there, but it's like it's almost like watching a gopher burrow its way towards you when the round impacts. It's just like, ooh. Yeah, it's not a good feeling. I had it happen to me twice, and it was neither time, both within 10 minutes of each other.
So just real quick, as you're talking about McMaster cresting this, the way it's written about is this, I think it's described as like an imperceptible ridge in the terrain that's kind of like perpendicular.
Running north to south.
Yeah, to your direction of travel.
Yes.
And because it's a desert, you can't really see it, but it's a perfect defensive position. So like you have to crest this and probably tip up a little bit and then come down, and the defense is watching you.
Yes. So what they did is they set it about 1,000 meters for the position because that's the effective range of the cannon on the T-72. We're effective on the move out to 2,000 meters. So the purpose of putting his defense there was to take away 1,000 meters from us, where we were basically, you couldn't really shoot at us accurately. So that was his plan. It was a good plan. It is probably the school solution at Fort Benning. McMaster comes over the rise, and all of a sudden, there's tanks everywhere.
And they take a shot at him. So like the setup is right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, he had one impact to the left, one in front of him. I mean, they're shooting at him. I mean, one was close enough that it knocked him down the turret. So, by the way, we're going through a minefield.
True. Tell me, talk to us again about 3 rounds in 10 seconds, because that sounds incredibly fast as you think of like the main round on a tank. What's going on in there to do that?
So the gunner's sitting on the left side of the turret. He's kind of looking across at the tank commander on the right side of the turret. And he's got a knee switch, a switch he can activate with his knee that opens the ammunition ready rack. That door is about 2 inches of steel that closes with 1,600 PSI. Don't get your fingers caught in there, okay? Because I've watched guys lose fingers on, pulling a round out and taking the knee off the switch. So he's got to take the round out. The nose is pointing towards the rear. So he's got to take it out with his hand switch, feed it, flip it over, shove it into the gun tube, release the arming lever so the breech block comes up so the system is ready to fire. So they probably had one in the tube already, what we call battle carry. Say battle carry, sabot, everyone puts a sabot round. But to do 2 more in that time requires, boom, the aft cap comes out, the tank commander's announcing the next ammunition, okay? And they've got it all labeled, like our loaders would write, sabot, S for sabot, H for heat on the, so they could see, and everyone had their own way of organizing the rack. That was the loader's business. But yeah, Taylor was he was freaking motoring, just stuffing
presumably
rounds.
They're moving the turret, right? They're
moving the turret,
to
swinging
another
back
target
and forth. Oh yeah, yeah. And as long as the gunner is holding the grips, the tube is moving too, because it's locked in stabilization on whatever the gunner's targeting. So there's a lot of crew coordination. The gunner's got to release his controls it at just the right time, so the loader's got a steady target, but not so long that his sight comes off whatever he's looking for. Because if you're looking through a soda straw, if you get off and you can't, it'll take you a few. You got to go back to 3 power, find the target again, go back to 10 power. So there's a lot of close coordination that happens. And we get back to those trail drills that nobody liked doing. That's where we made our money for this. Do a couple thousand repetitions of that, and you're pretty hardwired.
So he comes over the berm with some other tanks with him.
Almost
misses,
with him.
Then shoots
Yep.
3.
He's shooting tanks.
Okay.
He shot 3 tanks by the time, and then the 2 tank platoons come over the ridge, and it's just like, 4 rounds here, 4, just taking out big chunks of the enemy because we were so close, so you couldn't miss at that range. One of the issues we had was a Sabo would go through it. Now, Sabo's depleted uranium dart weighs like 8-10 pounds, about 2.5, the service ones. We call them the silver bullet. And that thing just relied on kinetic force. It would hit the vehicle, it would bore its rig, but the impact was so strong it would shatter the metal on the inside of the tank, and it would turn into shrapnel. It would just eviscerate whoever was inside. But you didn't necessarily see it would go in and out, and it would leave a hole about this big on the front of the tank. And sometimes we had guys re-engaging with heat rounds because they couldn't tell whether the stable had killed or not until the ammo would start cooking off. So the issue was T-72s, all the Soviet tanks have autoloaders. They load rounds, they load arms, they load legs if you're not careful. But all the powders in the carousel exposed in the turret, on the turret floor.
Wow.
Unlike our tanks where it's behind a 2-inch door and there's blowout panels on the top. So if we take a hit on our ammunition, the force is vented up and out away from the tank. Their stuff's just laid on the floor. So as soon as you got a spark in there, you're already too late getting out. So the troop is still maneuvering. We had turned south because the preponderance east-southeast, if that makes sense, on the compass. So we're swerving that way because the preponderance of the enemy was in that direction. So we come over the indivisibility line, kind of turn a little bit to the south. We go through the zone. We destroy 1 battalion. We destroy another battalion and part of the brigade to the south. And then we see come out of the smoke and everything. And there's the brigade reserve still sitting coiled up in their assembly area, 17 T-72s. That was supposed to be his hammer. That was like, he's going to fix us in place. We caught those guys before they could even get out of the coil. They died all in about 30 seconds. All 17 of them just gone like that. So
Jeez.
It was quick. I mean, total time from where we made initial contact at the bunker till we were on the objective where those tanks were parked was 23 minutes.
And I mean, here's the readout that McMaster has in something that you sent to me that he wrote in, I think, 2016 was 50 T-72s left smoldering, destroyed.
Yeah.
25 BMPs or armored personnel carriers, but typically BMPs, it looks like. 40 trucks and 2 other vehicles destroyed.
CSU 23-4. Yeah. Yeah.
In 23
it's a lot of stuff.
minutes.
Yep.
No friendlies hit.
Nope.
Just a decimation on that.
Yeah, it was annihilation. I mean, everybody was involved. I laugh because, if you know who SLA Marshall was, he had written in a book, A Study Did Men Against Fire, who said only about 30% of soldiers in the infantry platoon actually fire their weapons in contact, and only a few are actually aim fire. What's interesting is when you're in a crew, you're mutually supporting. It's different than being an individual soldier out there. So that bond you have with the guys in your crew is what prompts you to fight, as opposed to being a passive observer. We don't have enough guys to have guys being passive. Everybody's got to fight.
So when you're in the Bradley and kind of the tanks are coming online and they're shooting other tanks, what is it you're trying to do, or what do you remember in that 20 to 23 minutes?
Interesting because it's like a bunch of snapshots of time for me. And what I remember is we were oriented to the south. So the troop to our south, Iron Troop, had just stopped before. So there was nobody but enemy to our south. And that was my platoon's job. is A, screen the flank and kill everything out there. First platoon, when the tanks had gone ahead of them, first platoon's duties became shooting everybody else other than tanks. So as the tanks go by and the dust and the smoke and everything, guys that they thought they had killed were jumping out of bunkers with RPGs, trying to kill the tank commanders, because we all rode out of the hatch because you can't see anything from in there. We're like, yeah, that's a risk we'll take. And then what these guys didn't see is like about 200 yards behind him is first platoon, just smoking dudes as they come out of their holes. And everybody's getting involved. The mortars are like pitching grenades into bunkers. There are a lot of guys who use their M16s. You know, a lot of the Bradley commanders, I kept mine on top of the turret right there with a Velcro strip. So never fired mine, but a lot of people did because there's just the density of stuff as you move. You couldn't kill everything and keep moving. There was some stuff that was left behind that we had to go. No tanks or just a bunch of infantry basically. But yeah, we're killing. So there was a boundary. So the road that came out of the bunker, the east-west road, Talcano was in the north, and the 12th Armored Division was in the south of that road. 12th Armored Division was not a Republican Guard division, but so they were equipped with T-55s and MTO. So you could kind of see, depending on what was shooting at you, you're like, oh, this is a boundary between units. This is a good place to attack because usually they can't coordinate well. Who owns the road they're on? Well, I thought 3rd Brigade did. No, 2nd, you know. So it was a great place. It was serendipitous. It wasn't because of planning on our part. It was just there. My guys at that point started primarily killing T-55s and MTOPs because of the way we're oriented. First platoons just killing dudes, and the tanks are shooting tanks and PCs.
You mentioned that you had 2 encounters where you were being shot at by a tank. Was that during that engagement with the T-55s?
The first one was when I came around the corner of the bunker and started to turn south. And my gunner's just like, driver stop, tank. And he was already putting the tow up. I mean, Sergeant Hovermail was on it. And I was looking at something like on our little grid thing that we tried to use to plot positions. So my head was down and I jumped up in the hatch and I just see the tank fire and the round lands about 20, 30 yards in front of me. Sergeant Hovermail kills him. Like, okay. We keep going. About 5 minutes later, another tank out, and we just turned. I just remember seeing the flash of the gun, and the round impacted like maybe 10 feet in front of my Bradley, and just like threw dust and everything all over me. And I was like, holy shit.
What?
Yeah. And again, Sergeant Hovermail was on it. I mean, I could barely spit out the fire command. He already had to tow up. He's just smoked the dudes.
You can't see the round in flight, right? Like you see the explosion, and then you're just looking for where is it going to hit, basically.
Yeah, you're just looking for the impact. It's yeah. Well, you know, I mean, believe me, we got called on the radio. Hey, you're not supposed to go up beyond the 70 Easting. And like HR is like, tell them I can't stop. We're killing stuff right now. We're continuing to advance. You know, the poor XO is like the one who's like getting flamed by squadron. But
it's the rite of passage.
Yep. Hey man, everyone's been there if you spend any time in the service.
But I think that's
and people
are
laughing.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned beforehand that you were getting these instructions before the fight, like, hey, we got to keep moving. We got to take this fight to them, like violence of action. And that's what he's doing, right? Like, hey, stop at the 70 Easting. Well, I can't. I'm engaged right now, and I'm not going to stop, or else they're going to have a chance to regroup.
Yep. And that was it. And unfortunately, you know, the S3 McGregor was maneuvering with our troop, sometimes in front of the tanks where he shouldn't be, but maneuvering with our troop. But the point being that he was there where the main effort was at that time. He saw what we were seeing. He understood what we were saying. So when the CP started getting on our CP about crossing the 7-0, and he just got on the squadron and it's like, hey guys, you're 10 minutes and 2 kilometers behind. Just shut up. Let's fight the fight.
So with McMaster in particular, and it sounds like yourself and the other platoon leaders really embodied this idea of moving quickly and seizing the advantage. But you described this previous troop commander who exited and just wasn't that effective in the field. I mean, it sounds easy as we talk about it, like, hey, just keep pressing, take the advantage. But it's not that easy in practice. What is it that makes somebody successful at that?
I think it's training. It's thousands of repetitions, even when you're bored to tears, and doing the right thing all the time. Do the right thing, do the hard thing, do the right thing when no one's looking. I mean, that was stuff we drilled into our guys. And we had a culture like, hey, if you make a mistake because you're trying to do something, you're not going to get punished for it. The only mistakes you get punished for is not doing anything. And that's, believe me, and now platoon leaders, we have very different personalities across the board, but we all subscribe to the same ideas when it came what we had to do, like when we came in contact.
It's a bit surprising to me, just not having been in an armor unit, that a TOW could take out a tank so effectively. And it sounds maybe it's just these guys, these sergeants, staff sergeants, platoon sergeants who are firing these things are just lethal with them. But I don't know how many you get to train with. It sounds like they're incredibly effective.
You get like maybe the best, like the TOW range was way out on the west side of Graph. And you could tell where it was because there's all this wire. You had to roll up your wire when you were done. And so maybe one or two, when you go to Graph, maybe one or two guys in the troop would get to shoot a real TOW.
Yeah. Like
that's it.
Once a year.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's like, and it'll freak you out the first time because when it comes out of the launcher, there's just a little motor that, shoves it out. And so it drops. And you're like, I've seen guys just hit TOW aboard right then and just drive the missile into the ground because they didn't have any experience with that. It's just part of the firing process. It goes out on its, propulsion motor, it drops a little, and then the big motor kicks in and it takes off. But if you've never seen that before and you just watch the thing drop, you're at
instinctively, you probably think there's a problem.
The thing I will say about the TOWs is, so the way the Bradley was designed, there's a big hatch in the back behind the turret. Hatch is supposed to open. Guys in the back load the TOWs undercover from within inside the Bradley. I want to say 5 out of 6 of the hatch releases broke immediately. So we've got guys, hey, we need to stop. And you're really vulnerable when you're loading your TOW because you got to max elevate your gun and turn your gun to about 10 o'clock. You're very vulnerable. So we always worked on drills like talking to each other. Hey, I'm going to TOW reload. Make sure you're cycling AP instead of HE ammunition. Cover me while I do that. So that was a section battle drill. But these guys, these scouts in the back, who've gotten zero information because they're looking out through this little vision block, listening to the nets, the 2-3 nets going on, and they're like, sir, what's going on? Hey, shut up. I'm busy. But these guys took it upon themselves. Hey, got to get it done. Open the back door. One guy gets out, throw the TOWs out. One guy climbs up on top of it. And there's freaking small arms fire everywhere. Standing up on top of the Bradley, putting those things in. Remember the first guy did, I had this little guy, Charles Batubin, who was a wrestler. He's like all about 105, 5 feet tall. And the vehicle commander didn't even see him jump up there. He smacked him on the back of the helmet. He's like, TOW loaded. And like, Sergeant Dickey turned around. He's like, I first thought there was an Iraqi on my tank, my Bradley. I'm just like, it's just your scout, taking care of you.
One of the things that surprised me reading some of the accounts is what happened with the POWs. The surprise maybe that they had. You probably didn't, I assume you weren't taking any POWs, like you're feeding them back through the lines. But
yeah,
I remember
so what
reading
would happen. So we would take TPWs. We had a drill, like there was some Sergeant Schoonmaker in my platoon was the POW guy. That was his job. Put the wire out, carry some extra wire, put the wire out, put them in a little corral until the first sergeant's got time to take them back. Do your 5 S's, search, see, segregate, do all the stuff you're supposed to do, and then just park them.
Some of the things that I read said that the Iraqis were crying because they were so surprised at how well they were being treated, because their commanders had told them, hey, they're going to execute you on sight.
Yeah.
You're done. You had soldiers searching people and then giving them their wallets back, like afterwards,
Yeah.
when everything's said and
With
done.
all the money in it.
Yeah, with money that they had stolen theoretically from Kuwaitis,
Yeah.
basically.
Yep.
But just the humanity, effectively, that we're showing that none of these people expected in this fight.
It was, I mean, they weren't just expressing thanks. I mean, some of them were, it was kind of embarrassing. They were like groveling at our feet. Like, I think they thought they were arguing for us not to kill them. And then when they found out, it's like, okay, no more hugs, guys. You know,
Yeah.
Sit back down, you know, sip on that bottle of water. But they were. And at first, that's why at night, none of them would surrender, because they'd been told that we would just kill them. And it wasn't until we got some dribs and drabs of POWs. It wasn't until we brought the PSYOPs team up and got our Kuwaiti interpreter on the loudspeaker and started, you know, broadcasting surrender appeals for guys to come in. And then it was like a flood of guys.
What do you remember after that battle? Presumably, you know, from what I remember reading, it sounds like there's you kind of strong point eventually on the 73 Easting. Indirect fire is going overhead, and you're able to sit there and kind of watch what's going on. What do you remember talking to your guys about? What do you remember from McMaster at that point?
A tremendous feeling of relief, obviously, when we got up on that objective and everybody reported in 100%, no injuries, no damaged vehicles. We're all good. I didn't expect that. I mean, I knew we were kicking their ass, but it just takes one lucky shot.
Yeah.
And, you know, are you standing 1 foot to the left, 1 foot to the right, 1 second too soon, 1 second too slow? I mean, at certain, it's just the odds. I thought that somebody would have gotten hit. And so the feeling of relief and, you know, just that your soldiers were not safe, but had made it through that part of the fight unscathed. But we didn't have a lot of time to sit around and reflect that night, because we'd still 1s and 2s. The lines of drift were bringing vehicles into our position, and, you know, we'd shoot them individually or hang. But the big thing was, now we've got those divisions that were behind us. Now we've got to pass through the entire 1st Infantry Division at night, which was graduate level stuff. Not to
What
get
does that
somebody
entail?
ratted.
That's like creating lanes for them to move through. And
Yeah.
we're talking, you know, thousands of people, equipment.
Yeah. Entire brigades coming through, like on like a 300-400 meter front. So we had just, all we did is myself and the scout platoon leader of the South were just like, okay, if I don't fire past this magnetic azimuth, I know I won't hit any of your guys as long as they don't move forward to your front line trace. And he did the same. They just put it out, hey, don't fire, you know, whatever it was, 100 degrees magnetic. Figure it out. Step outside with your compass, make sure. And then they just, first the Apaches came through, and just watching entire battalions coming through ahead of 1st Infantry Division. And then just thought, I mean, the sky was already lit up because we were MLRSing. We'd found an ammunition cache, like one of the division caches, and we were just hammering it. And then the Apaches come in, and then they come driving back, you know, the whole sky's on fire. And then, man, these guys come through, the 1st Infantry guys come through, and there's nothing to shoot within direct fire range. As soon as they clear the front line of us, it was just like, just started blasting stuff. You know, didn't matter whether it was dead or alive. They're just, you know, they'd driven all this way, and damn it, they were going to shoot something. It was, you know, we told them don't do it. We said there was nothing out there, but you know how it is. I'm sure if we'd been the guys going through, we would have done the same thing. But it was impressive seeing a whole brigade plus come through in like about an hour. I mean, just the math involved, the geometry of getting people in the right sequence with the right stuff in the right place at the right time. I was amazed it came off the way it did, actually.
What do you remember from McMaster at the time? Either that night or, later in that deployment, talking about that event.
Well, I laughed the next day. We were still in the AO. We were picking up POWs, searching vehicles and stuff. And our skin had turned black from the mop suits. We've been wearing mop suits for like 5 days.
Oh, nasty.
And our clothes were black. Our faces were black. He decides he's going to get a 5-gallon can of water and wash himself on the back deck. So he drops trout. He's butt naked washing himself. And the EPWs are looking at him like he's an alien for another, because, in their culture, you would just never do that. There he is, butt naked. The thing I loved about the troop and HR's leadership is no matter if you got chewed out, it was with love. It was because he wanted you to do better. We could talk to each other freely about stuff that a commander may not want to hear. Another commander would be like, you could just say what was on your mind and explain what you're doing, why you're doing it. It's great. The only people who had problems were guys who were jacked up, to be honest with you. I mean, HR is a very funny guy. There's kind of a culture of weird humor in the troop. You know how it is when you spend a lot of time together. Everyone's got their memes and their, statements that keep getting repeated ad nauseum. So it's really, it was a group of guys that I really enjoyed being around, irrespective of what we were doing. Hard times, fun times. I mean, we traveled together. We all still stay in touch. One of the things that's amazing, there's a group of about 25 of the lieutenants from that squadron from that time. And we're on like a WhatsApp chat that's just been open for years and years and years. It started because one of the guys got cancer and he started posting his PSA readings every week, and then everyone started commenting. So when I go to second cav reunions, like at least a quarter of the guys are just the lieutenants from our squadron from Desert Storm, which is really cool.
That is.
That it's that important to them.
At what point does, I assume it's HR, have you all write your account of that battle?
That day on the 27th. So those accounts I sent to you were written over the 27th and 28th. He had the foresight. I would have never thought of something like that. He had the foresight that it's like, you're going to forget it. Stories are going to get mixed up. Let's write it all down. So I think I mentioned in one of the emails, what's so interesting about it is you'd read guys' accounts and they could be in the same Bradley turret sitting knee to knee, and you read their 2 accounts and you never know they're in the same vehicle.
Yeah. It's
what people focus on, what people remember, like everyone's looking through that soda straw kind of and super enhanced things that you saw that nobody else saw.
I mean, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating piece of history that I hope is like going to be in the Library of Congress or something, but it's like 100 pages of handwritten notes, typed out notes of each person's perspective, including like the field artillery officer, like the FIST team or the Colt team. And to your point earlier, this is like a true combined arms effort, like tanks, Bradleys, FA, NBC, engineers, like they are all part of that. Got it all. And it worked so well. And we made, you all made it look easy, but it's not, it's all that training and the work that went into it.
And there's a lot of blood, sweat, ass chewings, fights.
No doubt.
I mean, HR and I got in a physical fight on the soccer field in front of the entire squadron before we left. I'm like, oh man, I'm dead. I mean, it was like, hold me back. We were both like doing this. And, and afterwards it was like, I think it was the week of Thanksgiving. He's like, hey man, he slaps me on the back. It's like, that was great. He's like, I was really stressed out because like my family's visiting and we're getting ready to deploy. I just need the vent. Thanks. I'm like, so I'm not fired? Like, nah. Why would you think you're fired? Because I just basically threw hands with you in front of the entire squadron.
Oh.
But, you could do that. He was a fire and forget guy. He'd tell you what he needed to tell you, and then we'd just move on.
Well, geez, Tim, like we didn't even scratch the surface of your career, obviously. Like you go on
All
post
right.
9/11, and one of the things that you sent to me that really stuck out was, of all these things that we talk about, all the training, the deployments, the combat, that some of the toughest moments was a fairly short period of time when you were a rear D commander in the post
Yeah.
9/11 fight, having to go, and I hear this over and over again, like the hardest thing, no matter what, is notifying somebody that their
Yeah.
family member
I
is
did
finished.
not do notification because I had the whole brigade. My engagement was always before the memorial service. I go sit down with the family. They'd have a room reserved. You know how the chapels are. Every chapel's got like and just sit down and talk with them. And, they're always like, why, what happened? And most of the time I didn't know what happened. I mean, even with access with the SIPRNet, it wasn't like we laid that stuff out anywhere. It was just, but I tell you what, the brigade commander's wife, Patty Brown, she did all 44 notifications.
The,
That lady was a trooper.
the toll that takes, and like,
Yeah. At least I got to go over for the last part of the rotation, actually
gosh.
do some CAV stuff. It was funny because I worked for HR again in Talifar.
Oh, interesting.
He was the third ACR commander this summer of 2005. And we were I was the S3 of 214 CAV out of Lewis Stryker unit. And so we were doing RIPTOA with them and then stayed on for like another month and a half. But we had been in Talifar for 10 months at that point. I know it was a success story, but man, it was a bad place. It's 2005. I learned a lot of bad places, obviously. But yeah, it was interesting working because my squadron commander, he's a real taciturn guy, smart guy, but he wasn't about sharing himself with us. And then seeing me and HR be all buddy and buddy, he's like, you can go to the regimental meetings. I don't have to since you got friends there. All right, sir. Fine, whatever. But yeah, it was good seeing him again. I've got a picture of him, me, and the regimental sergeant major who I knew when he was the E5, Bradley Master
That's
Gunner,
amazing.
all together. Yeah, standing by the bunker in Talifar.
What did it feel like being there in a striker this time?
I asked to be in the strikers. CGSC, they come talk to you, branch comes talk to you, depending on where you've been and where you are kind of in their profile. You get options or you don't get options. I was coming back from Korea, so I could choose anywhere. And the branch manager was my old squadron commander, so I knew him. And he spent like an hour trying to talk me out of going to strikers. Again,
Wow.
you don't want to be there because they hadn't even equipped the first one. So they're the first two are at Lewis. They hadn't even equipped the first one yet. So this is all an idea. There's no equipment. He's like, you don't know if this is going to be bust, something that loses support. He's like, you invest all your field grade time here. You may be empty-handed when it comes to battalion command time. Like, hey, thanks, sir. I appreciate you taking it, but I'm going to take that risk. I think, I just thought the way that the war was going, that it was better than a truck. I never realized how much better it was because, cruising around, you're up out of the hatch and stuff like that. And a lot of the injuries are guys getting fragged and being thrown from the vehicle and stuff. I never really appreciated my striker until I was a squadron commander and we went back to Bakaba in 2007 on our PDSS, pre-deployment site survey, and had to ride around in a Humvee in Bakaba for 5 days. That's just like, get me. I would rather walk than be inside this Humvee. It was worst experience my military life, I think, because they were taking a lot of casualties there. They like the week before we got there, they'd lost 10 guys. They just collapsed the house on a squad.
Wow.
So running around Humvee, man, I was just like, that is uncool. I tip my hat to anyone who's got the stones to do it, but I'll take my striker any day.
Yeah.
The strikers were pretty survivable too. We had the cages on them, the RPG cages that made them, and then just some really aggressive driving that I don't think you were able to do by 2008.
How much of that mentality from the Gulf War did you bring forward in the strikers, that kind of seizing the initiative? I'm sure it's a very different footprint in
Different,
07,
yeah.
obviously.
But the element of surprise, our ability to mass, So I'll just give you an example. So after 3rd ACR took Tal Afar, we went back to Mosul briefly, and then we went down to Rawa, down the Euphrates River Valley, to support Task Force 145, because they were losing. They had those Panders, those Austrian little armored cars, and they were losing guys to IEDs out in Al-Qaim on the Syrian border. So part of what we were down there is there hadn't been anyone there since 2003 in the Euphrates River Valley. They couldn't figure out why. Like all the stuff and all the foreign fighters were coming straight down the pipe from Al-Qaim to Al-Sad to Ramadi. So they put us there. So anyways, we were responsible for like 100 miles. The RA was the size of New Jersey for the squadron. Okay. And we got down in Al-Qaim one day, but on the north side of the river, and we got caught down in there because the water table was so high you couldn't go off road. And we got in a situation, and SVB had destroyed my FSO's track, and then we spent the better part of a day fighting our way out of there. Didn't lose anyone. My track caught fire from towing the FSO's track on its belly for 10 hours. It was just a miserable day. And I remember we had an LNO from Task Force. He was a Delta guy, call sign Happy, because he was like, had a real hangdog face. Good dude. So anyways, we finally get back. It took us like a day and a half to get back. Like, okay, we're going back there. We're going to hammer these dudes. So for like 3 weeks, put this plan together, how we're going to do it. And essentially, like, we came out across the desert at night, waited till it's nightfall to leave our COP, and then go cross country to the last terrain feature. And I remember that Happy was back in Al-Assad with his unit. It's like 3:30 in the morning. We're stand to, and we're getting ready to roll in town. And all of a sudden we hear this Black Hawk comes in. It lands right behind my track. Who steps out? It's Happy. What are you doing here, man? I thought you were in Al-Assad. He's like, I wouldn't miss this for the world, sir. It's like, where'd you get the helicopter? We're like, hey, man, no one does that to us. We're the Cav. Nobody does that to us. And there were tactical reasons to go out there too. But the basic thought was, hey, we need to go back there. We need closure on this. So that was so like I said, 2 of the 3 troops, we maneuvered out there in the night, shut down, went silent. And then as the sun was coming up the next day, we had the dirt team like listening in and jamming up from the high ground, listening to their nets. And we hit that town, and it was like a starburst. Each troop had a different direction they had to go, based on our target decks and stuff, where we thought, because they were literally, it was their MEPs. I mean, Al-Qaim was the MEP station for the Euphrates River Valley. And we just hit like 4 or 5 different places at once. And they were just overwhelmed. I mean, we almost had no contact at all. The only contact we really had is, while the attack, we were sitting at the foot of the bridge that goes across the Euphrates River. We watched these guys pull up on the south side. My boss had already asked to drop the bridge like 3 times. He liked destroying bridges. And they're like, no, you can't do that. It's like, how about I just drop a span? And they're like, give me an F-16. Let me change it. No. So we watched there's a palm grove across the river. We're just sitting there, boss is smoking a cigar, listening to the reports coming in, everything's good. These guys dismount a mortar. And it's like, they're turning it, and we're watching them set up the mortar. And it's like, my boss is like, where's the JTAC? I'm like, he's in the back of my truck, sir. I don't let him out unless someone's with him. He's like, give me the JTAC. He finally has a job. He turns to the kid, he goes, see those guys? He's like, yes, sir. He's like, it's a race. Go. So we finally scared up a Marine Cobra. And these guys are dead. They're setting the base plate. We're watching them do this. What? We're telling the drivers, all right, man, have everything started up, having gear. If I say go, you go, okay? But we're just standing there, and my boss is like, who's going to win? Who's going to win? That Cobra came in and just put a hellfire in him. He's like, damn, good job, JTAC.
What were these guys thinking? Like,
I have no idea what they're thinking.
Line of sight?
I think we were just looking at them, 2 white SUVs. Of course, they were white SUVs pull up out of the bed. They drag this mortar, and we're watching them. We knew immediately what they were doing. Everyone knows what a mortar crew looks like when they set up the mortar. And it's just like, could these dumbasses like hang around before we could get some air on them? Because we were restricted, we couldn't fire across the line. We had to coordinate because the Marines owned the south half of that. JTAC earned his money that day.
That's awesome. So, Tim, I'm so appreciative of the time. This has been great. I got 2 questions I ask everybody at the very end. I have no idea what these answers are for a tanker, so I'm very excited to hear. But one is there anything that you carried with you on your person, maybe in the tank, that had sentimental value, something that somebody gave you, good luck charm, something to that effect?
So I wore a St. Michael's medal and a scapula. Yeah, my godfather, my uncle's a priest, so I had an inside line on the religious stuff. But yeah, I wore those through all my tours. I got the same St. Michael's medal I had.
Did people bring anything into the tank with them? Like, would you have like a picture that you put up of a family member or anything?
Sure. No, not those kind. I've never saw a picture of a family member in a tank. There may be a centerfold in there, depending on the crew. Like McGregor, Major McGregor in his track had a picture of Erwin Rommel
Oh my
on the door,
gosh. All right.
you know? So I never put anything personal in there because it was workspace.
Yeah.
It's kind of a tanker thing. You know, everything needs to be in its place, everything combat loaded. Don't bring extra stuff in here.
And then last question, just looking back on that time, I mean, spanning several wars, lots of loss that we just discussed, lots of high times too, obviously. But as you look back, would you do that again?
Oh, of course. Even with the bad times. Of course, there's no doubt in my mind.
Love it. Thanks so much, Tim. This has been great. I wonder if you're, I don't know if I'm allowed to read some of those accounts that you sent me. I'd be interested in reading
Yeah,
them
they're
out.
public.
Yeah.
There's already a set at the Bush 41 library because one of my drivers used to be a curator there. He went back and got a PhD in history.
That's cool.
So there's a set there, and there's a digital set with the Regimental Museum in Vilsack that I brought over there in 16. So it's public domain.
They're special.
Use them any way you want.
Thanks so much for the time, man. This has been a blast. It's something I've been looking forward to for years. I'm so glad we got connected. Thank you, Tim.
I'm glad. I'm very glad. I enjoyed doing it. I love talking about the guys.
I hope you enjoyed that combat story. I have been looking forward to doing something on the Battle of 73 Easting for so long. That was a great one. And just hearing what it was like when you expertly execute that combined arms function just sounds so incredible. And I'm just so grateful that Tim took the time with us and that we just had a chance to get him on the show. So with that, got a couple comments here. The first is from Words to Mom's Yo. It's on the two SEALs talking combat ops, right? And so that's Sam Mackey and Joel McGuire together, the two of them talking about their time downrange. He says, love the concept of having 2 former teammates coming together to reminisce and tell stories. Heartwarming stuff. Thanks, guys. And then Jason, also on YouTube, says, Sam and Joel, like all your guests, are awesome and appreciated. Keep up the great interviews. Jason says, these warriors sitting at a table, thank you, or it says, 3 warriors sitting at a table. Thank you for your service and great podcast episode to hear from these 2 SEALs. God bless. And then the last one here is from Eric Wachowski. He says, this is awesome to have 2 of them together. I do like the face-to-face interactions and interviews you've been able to do lately. I've been watching you for years now, and you're a great interviewer. Thank you so much, Eric, for saying that. We're trying to have people in person. We're also doing some remote. We're just trying to get the sound a little bit better. We're working on it. But thanks for all the positive comments, listening this far. And then the last one was from Rational Remedies. It says, amazing story, Ryan. Keep up the great work. Love this channel. Love your interviews and the guests. Really appreciate everybody's time here. This was a great one. I hope you all enjoyed it. It's important we don't forget about Desert Storm. Some of these these battles that took place there gave us what we needed to know going into Iraq and Afghanistan post 9/11, and a lot of those guys were there again. So with that, thank you for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend or week, wherever you are, and stay safe, y'all.